Hey, welcome back to the Gill Athletics Track and Field Connections podcast. I'm so humbled to be your host, Mike Cunningham, Business Development Manager here at the great Gill Athletics. And today we're gonna go East Coast to really one of my favorite recruiting states. Not my favorite state because it's cold, so I'm not keen there. But we're gonna go to New Jersey, and I'm sure we're gonna talk about recruiting and athletes and just everything that has fun. No left turns. There's a lot going on in Jersey. So let's get into it. Help me welcome head cross country coach, assistant distance coach for track and field for Christian Brothers Academy. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Mr. Sean McCafferty. Sean, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. It is, by the way, it's a lovely day in New Jersey. My wife and I were just riding our bikes around the beach, and it was about 70 degrees and
Wow.
beautiful day. So it's not cold today.
Now, when you said the beach, does that mean that's the Jersey Shore?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so you
Yeah.
did a little gym and a little tan and a little, I mean, that's still kind of cool, right? Or at least,
So I've never seen the show. I used to lifeguard about a mile north of where they used to hang out.
oh man.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
became my wife and I held off on watching it for a long time. And then we started watching it. It became like our guilty pleasure television show. It was just so funny to laugh at these guys and gals and
Yes.
the hijinks literally that they got into. So
Yeah.
great.
There was
So
a couple years where no matter where I went, people would ask me like, "Oh, where do you live?" And like, "Oh, in New Jersey." "Oh, by the shore?" And like, "Oh, we see it." I was like, "Oh, great. We saw the TV show."
that's what you want your whole state to be known for, is that show, right?
Yes, exactly.
What did I see the other day? We were walking around, I think Costco, and in their a store called Ollie's. Do you have Ollie's
We
up?
do not. No.
Oh, I don't know that where they're at. This we've just got one here, we're in Champaign, Illinois, where the
Okay.
University of Illinois is at, and it's kind of like a catch-all discount store. So you have no idea what they're going to have in there, but they'll have a lot of it, and it'll be really cheap, and it's awesome. It's kind of like to me, it's kind of like a swap meet, Goodwill
Right.
type of, you just don't know what you're going to get, but it's going to be cool. And they have a huge book section. So my wife and I were looking around in the book section there, and we came across this cookbook, and I covered up the name because I instantly recognized who this person was. And so I covered up the name. I was like, "Do you recognize this?" And she's like, "No, who? What celebrity chef is that?" And it was I can't remember his name, but it was one of the Jersey Shore guys.
Oh no.
I was like, "Ooh, times are low when they're just slapping your name on a cookbook."
Yeah, pork leg and cheese and cheese steaks. Yeah, that's yeah. There you go.
Well, Sean, the most important question we can ask you is why does New Jersey not allow left-handed turns? What is going on
My mom loves it because she hates making left-handed turns. So, yeah, I don't know. We also have crazy circles where like there's no turns technically. I don't know. It really makes driving sometimes very difficult depending on where you're going. But yeah, I have no idea. It's been like that since before I was born. So
Yeah, first time I went there, this is the old days where I'd have MapQuest printed out. So I was looking at
right,
what
right.
routes and stuff, and I hit the left turn signal. I guess I didn't realize there was a cop behind me, so he lit me up to kind of like, you can't do that. And I think I then saw the sign of no left turn. And I was like, what in the world? I was just kind of so
Yeah.
discombobulated. What is going on around here? And interestingly enough, if I remember correctly, Jersey, one of the two states that all I'm gonna call them full service
Mhm.
gas stations. I mean, you can't pump your own gas.
No, you're not allowed to. I think we're the only now. I believe Oregon was the other one.
I was
Um,
just in Oregon. No, I was just in Oregon, and they pumped my gas. So I think
oh,
Oregon.
okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
we're the two states then. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
And I don't think it's ever changing. Not anytime soon. People love
yeah.
it, and our gas is not expensive either.
I,
So
and that's what you would expect,
yep.
exactly, right? I remember the first time I popped into New Jersey, and I went in to get gas from a rental car or whatever, and I popped out and I just started pumping it, and the guy comes over and is like, "You couldn't wait for us," and I was like, here's what I thought. I thought I had pulled into what probably was the very last full service gas station in this country. I thought like, oh, I didn't realize that. And then he educated me. He was like, no, man, we do this around.
Allowed to. Yeah. What's funny is if you do pull up to a gas station, like I ride a motorcycle, and they refuse to pump your gas because I guess it's harder. I don't know. And the tanks are very small, so it's tricky.
Right.
Or if you go up with a boat, they kind of don't pump it for you. Yeah, it's
Huh.
weird.
That is
Yeah,
weird. Yeah,
they're
yeah.
technically supposed to all the time, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
Jersey.
weird. Jersey, that's a good. jersey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Sean, let's I'll take you off the representation of all New Jersey and let's kind of maybe narrow down and focus on you here. Sean,
All
love
right.
to learn more about your journey in this great profession, this great sport of track and field. I always like to start off the questioning with, for coaching, assuming that you were an athlete, somewhere it had to turn for you. We don't normally kind of just grow up knowing that coach is a profession. We kind of just think it's just what other people do. But somewhere coaching had to be maybe something that instead of was done to you, hey, go run this, go lift that.
Right.
Somewhere maybe you had to flip and be like, wait a minute, maybe I could actually be a coach. Where does coaching begin for you?
Uh, Probably when I was born. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, I think you're yeah. So my dad was a coach in New Jersey for a very long
Right.
time, and so I grew up around that. I from as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a math teacher and a track coach, cross country coach in a high school. So I grew up doing that. I had the lucky opportunity. My father became an administrator my freshman year of high school, and eventually, so he couldn't coach anymore. And then when he retired, he started coaching again with one of his college roommates and one of his other close friends, and I got to coach against him a couple times, which was pretty cool.
Oh,
Yeah, because I was just starting and he was kind of towards the end there. But yeah, so I always wanted to be a coach and math teacher. I'm not a math teacher. I'm a Latin teacher.
oh,
So
jeez.
that didn't work out. But
Yeah.
yeah. So I remember when I was 5 or 6 years old, I ran with my dad a lot. Just he would run every day, and I'd go run a half mile with him, whatever it was. I played soccer, basketball, baseball, but I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to run. I got to middle school and I ran really fast, and I left the other sports behind, and that was kind of it. So
Did
um,
dad coach you all the way through
he
senior
didn't
year?
coach me at all.
Okay, I was wondering. Okay.
He wanted to kind of take a step back. He advised me. There were times when we had tough talks about things, but for the most part, he did not coach me. He
Mhm.
kind of let me figure things out, and there were times where he would give me workouts and such if my high school coach was not involved. But
Mhm.
for the most part, it was me and whoever my coach was at the time. So
Yeah, because I always wonder, son of a coach, you hear about this like in the football and basketball world, and maybe we only hear about it on the times that it works out, but you hear that, that son or daughter goes on to be a great basketball player or a great
right.
football, or, typically a quarterback is what I always hear on the football side. It's like coach's son, quarterback. I mean, it's just automatic. No, I've never heard of the coach's son who becomes the offensive lineman. I don't ever hear that story. But I'm curious, as you were going and you said you were playing some different sports there, was there, as dad was also coaching track and he might have coached some other sports as well, was there always that eye of like, yeah, but my dad is the running coach, so that's kind of what I need to be going towards?
Yeah. So even further back than this, my grandfather was the 1921 state champion in the 600-yard dash in Massachusetts.
Wow.
And then in 1965, I want to say, my dad was the 600-yard champ in Massachusetts. Um, my grandfather went to Notre Dame to run. He did not finish at Notre Dame. Something happened where he was released from the school, but he said it involved a horse in the dorm or something. But we never got the real story. But
We don't talk about
anyway,
that around Thanksgiving, right?
no, 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 no. But Newt Rockney was his track coach back in the day.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, because back then, he coached football, and it was 1921. Like it
Yeah.
was, it was before he was Newt Rockney, basically. And then, so anyway, and my dad, ran at Quincy High, just outside of Boston. I believe my grandfather was Boston English. I think he ran for. My dad ended up going to Villanova, ran under Jumbo Elliott,
Wow.
won several Penn Relays titles there, in distance medley and I think 4x8. And then he started coaching shortly after that. So yeah, it's in my blood.
So it's interesting. I can kind of picture you growing up, like hearing these stories. No grandpa sits down with their grandson and just tells them their history, but through certain things, a story would come. It's like, well, I actually won the state title in the 600, and then that story comes out, and so you're kind of always be hearing these stories. you kind of had two choices there. You could have been like, okay, well, I'm going to forge my own path. I'm going to become the
Right.
greatest lacrosse player. Then I don't want anything to do with running. Or okay, this is
Yeah.
obviously there's some genetics and family history, and you kind of went that route.
Yeah, I was always very fast. Like when I played Little League,
Mm.
I was lead off. I would bunt almost every time I got up because I could outrun every ball. In fourth inning when they put the bench kids in, I would go to center field so I could cover for them because I was just so fast. In middle school, I ran 440, 207, and 55. So this is in the 90s when that was still kind of fast for the kids. But yeah, so I always kind of knew that that's what I wanted to do. Every once in a while I'd run a road race, and when I was little, I didn't never really trained until I got to high school. But yeah.
So you said dad didn't coach you in high school, though.
No.
So what was that like, though? Because so obviously there was a coach overseeing you, but dad still he's right
Yeah.
there, and dad sounded like he at least had some kind of lore of like, oh man, dad. I mean, dad ran into Villanova, right? So I mean, right there, he's got some cachet because
Right.
not only Villanova its own, but during that era, holy cow, pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm still working on trying to beat some of the records that he coached when he
Mm.
was at St. Joe's Metuchen and later Brick High School. But that's another another angle. Yeah, I think so. I had several coaches in high school. I did go to CBA for a year and a half, so I did have Tom Heath for a little bit.
Okay.
I was just traveling an hour to get there. It became too much.
Mm.
And I think my dad kind of wanted that type of situation where he could literally drop me off and somebody would really care for me. But then I ended up going to Central Regional. My cross country coach was a great guy. He did a lot. He coached me in the spring as well. He kind of he was hands off but caring.
Mhm.
So we did a lot of we had a huge state park next to us, so called Double Trouble State Park, and he would say
That's a
go
great
run.
name.
Oh yeah, go run for an hour. Half the team would go play football in the woods, and I would run for an hour. I'd run 10 miles or whatever it was, and that's kind of what my high school was like in a way.
Okay.
Winter wasn't as we didn't have the Armory, we didn't have
Mhm.
Ocean Breeze, so the winter season was quite a bit different than it is now.
Mhm.
So I think it served its purpose. It was a lot of training, a lot of outdoor races. We'd run at Princeton for our state stuff, but it was no spikes, so it was a little bit tricky. Most of our races were at Red Bank Regional High School. It was a 11 lap to the mile track, I think, on a all-purpose room floor. So um, yeah,
Oh man.
it was pretty wild, and there was no
Yeah.
room, so the infield would be packed as you're
Right.
running around. But
Yeah.
yeah, so high school was kind of that. It was low key coaching, but I
Yeah.
was very
Not a lot
self
of
motivated.
structure. I'm kind of hearing.
No,
Yeah.
no,
You said you kind of were born into thinking, I want to be a coach. I want to be a math
right,
teacher. So during this time with that, I'll call it loose structure. There's always structure, right?
right,
There's a very structure or a loose structure. There's some structure, right? Yeah, I took them to the park and they ran for an hour. That's a
right.
structure. But as you had that idea of I want to be a coach, what was your mindset? Were you reading books? Were you quizzing dad? Like, hey, what should we be doing? Were you trying in that hour run? Were you doing, you know what, I'm gonna do mile repeats instead of just a steady state run? Where you any in that at that point in time, it's hard to ask. You're 15, 16 years old. So I know that's tough, but
Yeah.
maybe.
I did a lot of coaching myself when I was in high school. I remember times in cross country where it was go down to the track and do a workout. And I would just kind of say, okay, this is what we're going to do, guys. So
Right.
I kind of ran the workouts a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, I think my cross country coach had an idea that my dad was feeding me things in a way. He really wasn't,
Okay, it doesn't
but
sound like he was, right.
wasn't. I mean, he would, if I asked him questions, he would help me out, and
Mhm.
he would tell me what to do and whatnot. But yeah, for the most part, I was on my own a lot, and
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah. As you were doing that, that's very much in that capacity, a leadership, a captain a type of role, especially if there's, again, that loose structure coming from the coaching side. But I was going to ask that question. So coach thought maybe your dad was giving you workouts. Doesn't sound like that, but were you having conversations with your dad about, well, what might this look like on a sprint day, or or like you had to be getting your coaching education somewhere. You're not just making up mile
Yes.
repeats and quarter repeat. You had to be getting that from somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. He was a big part of that. But it was, again, he tried to kind of let me forge my own path. I
Mm-hmm.
think that was a deliberate thing by him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I'd ask him like, "Hey, I'm doing this. What do you think?" I spoke to other people along the way, like Mike Mulqueen. You know him from Rutgers. My dad coached him in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents were, I think, are his daughter's godparents. So he was always around. He was very careful once I started to get older and better at running, but yeah, he was always around if I ever had questions and things like that. So
Yeah.
there was a lot. We were a track family, and it was a constant conversation. My mom had to make rules at the dinner table. We're not talking about track tonight.
Yeah, I meant to ask because I don't hear mom. Was mom the Villanova track runner as well,
She was
or is
not.
mom the anchor that's like, yeah, yeah, we're not going to talk track tonight? Yeah.
No, so my mom, very supportive of all of us. I have a brother. He wasn't really a runner, but he has had incredible success in life and his career. My dad and everything, and my mom has been the rock for us, throughout the years. And she became an official. I don't know if do you know Ed Scullion?
Oh yes.
So yeah, so my dad, during the years when he wasn't coaching, worked with Ed Scullion in the timing system, and my mom did as well.
Ah,
So they would travel to the Big East meet, the
yeah.
ACC meet, and everything. So,
I mean,
yeah.
this is track family 101
Oh
here.
yeah, big time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So where does a high schooler who wants to be a math teacher and a coach, where does one go to college for this?
So yeah, my parents pushed me to try and get the best education I possibly could. I was looking around the Northeast, Mid Atlantic area. So I ended up, I got accepted to Princeton, and I ran for Mike Brady and Fred Samara there.
Holy cow.
So, yeah, unfortunately, my health just never really worked out, and I wasn't able to run much at all. So that kind of
Right.
stinks. But I was the guy that was at practice most days, helping time, helping at meets and everything. So I really kind of dove back into the coaching from there. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I think that says a lot right there because, with health and injuries and things like that for our passion, running track is a passion.
right,
Easily could have said, you know what, this sport, I'm trying to put everything into the sport and it ain't giving me anything back. I'll go be a teacher, but I'm done with this.
right,
But instead, you double down and like, okay, I'll be there. What do you need me to do, Fred? You need me to time? I'll time. You need me to write down the result? All right, I'll write down the
right.
results. So you kind of dove into that side.
I did. And again, more dealing with Mike Brady, who is, obviously he passed on a few years ago, but he was one of my heroes through the years. Uh, every time I had issues, he would just say, "This will pass." He was always there for me. Really important person in my life through those 4 years at Princeton. So I learned a lot from him, and how to deal with people. So.
So I know Fred Samara fairly well. My former boss, now retired, and him were decathletes together. So
Okay.
him, the Harry Mara, and the Jenner all group. I can't remember if it was Jenner's dog or Fred Samara's dog was famous to be in the training group. Yeah, there was some dog in that group. Fred Samara tells a great story about it. But I don't know Mike Brady very well, and obviously he had a big impact on your life. Tell
Right.
us more about Coach Brady.
Yeah, so Mike Brady was he was a decathlete back in the day. Um,
Seems like everybody
and-
was. Okay.
yeah, and he ended up going. I think he was coaching at Ryder for a very long time, not a very long time, for 5 or 10 years, and he took over at Princeton in the late '80s, early '90s, I want to say, and he coached there until Steve Dolan took over. And I think his wife was a high-level executive in Waterford Crystal, and she got a job in Western Massachusetts. And he's like, "All right, I'm done coaching," and that was
Wow.
kind of it. But yeah, he was he kind of brought Princeton back on the map in terms of distance running, because they lost it in the mid 80s. They were very good, and there was a 5 or 10 year period where they kind of fell off the earth in a way. And then when I was there, they were very, very good, and since then have been very good, of
Yeah,
course.
for sure.
So yeah.
So what was it about him and his style that, I mean, your face kind of like, if you're watching us on YouTube, you probably noticed it. Your face, Sean, like it softened up when you
Right.
mentioned Mike.
He really cared about his kids, athletes, as people.
Mm.
Um, you know, I had a lot going on. I came in, I had a hip bone issue, a pubic bone issue. So that was one issue. And then I ended up having a heart problem that I had to get fixed. And I remember at a Sunday practice, I showed up, and I had just gotten out of a car, because my parents dropped me off, and because I was going to Robert Wood Johnson Hospital in New Brunswick. And so the day before, I had been there to get evaluated and everything, and I told him what was going on, and he just kind of put his arm on me. He said, "Don't worry, this will pass." And yeah, it was a tough time for me, physically, but it was nice knowing that he was always there and he always accepted me. um, and he did a lot of that for the guys on the team. I remember a guy named Adam Stuhlfault, who owns running stores now. I'm not sure where. I haven't spoken to him in years, but he came in from Minnesota, and had a really bad injury coming in, and like Brady never gave up on him.
Mm.
And by his senior year, I think he finished top 3 in the Ivy League, in cross country. Tony Baracco was a New Jersey state champion, from Kearney, the soccer capital of the U.S. But he was injured for 3 years, and then his senior year, Coach Brady never gave up on him. In his senior year, he won the Ivies. He was, I think, second in the IC4As when that was the combo
Big.
of the Mid Atlantic and New England
Yeah.
region. So yeah, he just never gave up on us, and I think that was an important thing, especially at a place like Princeton, where there's kids there that they're there for school. That's number one, and yeah, running is important, but it's a lot of the kids that's not
Mhm.
the order it goes. So
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I went to the Harvard of the South, Troy University, but that's not the same academically, I don't think, as a Princeton. As you're, dealing with, again, I can sense the emotions of, not being able to fulfill a running career that you would want. Doesn't mean you thought, oh, I can make the Olympics, but like, man, I think I can contribute to the Princeton team. And that's obviously not working out with the heart and things like that. But at the same time, you're at Princeton. So not only do you have that going on, but, academics and the society of Princeton are also great stressors to especially 18 to 22-year-old
right.
young people. How were you? Was academics going okay at that point though still, or how are you managing this?
Yeah, it was hard. School was very, very hard there. I tell you one thing that saved me sometimes, we had exams after Christmas for the first semester. So you were able to go home and you had 3 or 4 weeks to study, and write papers, that, final papers. So that helped a lot.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was challenging. And it was challenging for 90% of the people there.
Mhm.
And, there were even people that were the smartest people in the world, but for them, their standard was so high that they too had, like, were just working their butts off. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, it was tough. And I took some classes that were, I went from trying to be a math major. I left that in the first week I was there, and then I was like, okay, I'll be a history major. And I had a professor named Anthony Grafton who convinced me to study classics. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, if you major in history, you have to learn the language of a time period that you want to study. And he said, you want to do Roman history, you have to learn Latin or Greek. And I was like, oh, great. And he said, the classics department only has 8 people in it, and there's 25 professors. So, like when I wrote my thesis, I had 3 advisors. It was pretty cool. But, having that guidance kind of really helped me out.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were midterms in the fall were The Ivy League championships was usually the Friday of midterms. So you'd have class all week, midterms all week, and then the Ivy League championship. It was brutal. It was
Yeah.
very, very brutal for I never got to race that, unfortunately, but for the guys racing, I know it was tough. So
Yeah, I remember, just talking about the Ivy League, and you mentioned, like, some of the smartest guys in the world, and they're still, you didn't use the word struggling, but they're really having to work hard at it. It's not like they just come in and just breeze through. Although you could probably imagine some classmen you had that did. It was like, how lucky is that guy? Yeah. But I
yes.
remember there was a study done about that, about like, it was focused on the Ivy Leagues, no one specific school in the Ivy Leagues, but just the Ivy League in general. And it was talking about, you get the number one kid from every school, let's say, generalizing here. And when you do that, that means that all these kids together, like, well, that means the kids, 99% of the kids that were number one are no longer number one. And they have to deal with, what does number two look like, and what does number 60 look like, and number 100. Right. And some of them mentally just can't handle that. And it wasn't born of like I think it should be easy because it's always been easy. It's just been like, oh, I've always been applauded and lauded for being the number one kid in 8th grade and 11th grade and senior year. And now, well, I'm 20th, I'm not getting those accolades. The other 19 are getting more accolades.
Right.
And it's hard to put yourself back and say, oh, well, 20th is at Princeton is really stinking good. Like, you're fine.
I wasn't 20th.
Yeah. Hey, yeah.
I can assure you that.
Yeah. I don't know how many students there are, but I would have been the 20,000th. So 20 is perfect.
Right.
So you studied classics. That's interesting. Right. Offbeat, our CFO, Jay Norton, I can't remember what school he went to. He's from Oregon originally, but he is also a classics undergrad. And I remember thinking that was so odd because I'd go in his office, and he's our CFO, and I'd see the diploma, and I'm like, the classics, like, what are you doing as a CFO, man? And
like it.
He went on to get an MBA in finance, and all that's, that's how he went down that path. But so tell us, there's a lot of different majors out there. What does a classics major? Obviously, you study Latin because you said teach. I assume you learned Latin, or because you
did, yeah.
So, what does a classic major do? You just read like the Iliad all the time, or what?
So in college, I mean, you're studying Latin and Greek. So I learned to read Greek and Latin. Yeah, and you study the authors of the time period, and there's different angles you can take. Some people take it in a religious way to study the ancient religions. Some people take it in a historical way, as I did. Philosophy is another angle people take. So it really, it's a very broad subject, but the key is you have to learn Latin and or Greek to be able to do it. I mean, if you want to go beyond the college level, you have to learn both of them. So yeah.
Did you learn both, or
I did.
Just Latin?
No, I did learn Greek. I probably couldn't read Greek right now. It's been a long time, but yeah, it helps you because the structure is very similar. So yeah.
So you studied Latin, and you teach it, so you know it fairly well. Do you know what Latania, and I might be pronouncing that incorrectly, Litania? Say
that again. L-A-T?
I pronounce it Latania, Litania. So it's supposed to mean, what we looked it up was, it's a list of prayers.
A litany. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We were on the same path.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I was really worried. I was like, did we name our company?
No. No. You're right.
So our owner of Gill purchased another company called Porter Athletic, which does basketball and volleyball. Okay. And so when those two companies, came together, when we purchased Porter, we had to have call it an umbrella name. We're not just Gill Athletics. We're a collection of other brand names. And so he named the company Latania Sports Group, because he has always had in his office, it's kind of quite famous if you're here long enough and you kind of get to know him. In his office, he has a whiteboard, and he has a list of prayers for he's really famous for. It's quite amazing. It happened on the very first day that I've worked at Gill, and now on my almost 17th year, it still happens every single day. He goes around and speaks to every employee in the company, and so he knows everybody from the first day welder to the 17th year sales guy to the gosh, the CFO I mentioned has been here, I think maybe close to 25 years now. And he stops in, how's, how are you doing? How's your
Wow.
family? And so through that, as you gain trust when you first get here, you'll typically say, oh, we were visiting my mom. She's not doing real well. She's, whatever, yada, yada. And he puts it on his whiteboard, Mike's mom.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he's always had this list of prayers. And so when it came time to name the company, the umbrella company, is like, what am I going to name this after? And it was just kind of like,
Tanya.
that's who we are, and that's who I am. And so Latania Sports.
Wow.
Yeah. That is the only thing I know about Latin. Okay, we're done with Latin. That's
That's
it.
awesome.
I have no idea of any other things. I don't know about. It's almost said a Latin thing that I think I know, but it's probably wrong, so I'm not even going to say it. We're done with it. We're done with it. Okay, Sean, you graduate from Princeton. You
Right.
graduate from Princeton with a classics major,
Right.
and Latin and Greece, and you say, "I'm gonna go coach high school track and field." What was your first
Well,
foray?
I went to grad school for a
Of
year.
course you did.
I went to Rutgers
Okay.
to get a teaching thing.
Okay, I was gonna
But
ask a teacher certificate type. Yeah, okay.
I ended up leaving before I finished. I just did a year of school. I didn't.
Okay.
They were supposed to have a master's in teaching Latin program, and they really didn't, even though
Mm,
they had it on paper. So after a year, I ended up moving on to teaching. I started at a prep school for just a year, and then I moved on to the public schools in New Jersey. So yeah,
did you, when you were at that Rutgers for that year, did you help out with the
I
team at
did.
all? Yeah, okay.
I so I had eligibility. So I ran in the fall.
Oh,
Ended up
right.
getting injured again, but I did help quite a bit while I was there. Because again, Mike Mulqueen was such a good family friend.
Right.
So yeah, yeah,
And during that, during your undergrad at Princeton and you're helping out, and then this year at Rutgers, was there more, what's the word I want to use here? I'm gonna say solidification, but I'm not sure that's the right word. Of like, oh yeah, this is. I mean, I know I want to run. You try it again,
yes,
injury again, but it's like, okay, you know what? I really, maybe my real calling. Maybe someone's trying to tell me I need to be coaching here.
yeah. It's funny. At the time, I wanted to be a college coach.
Hmm.
I think a lot of college athletes have that dream, especially runners,
Mhm.
but. Uh, I think the concept of helping kids grow and become better men or women. I coach in an all boys school, so I often leave out the
Sure.
other gender. But I think to me that was something that I'm good at and I enjoy doing. I also love Latin and I love teaching it. So, but yeah, going to Rutgers, helping out at meets, helping friends and things like that, train, has always been something I've loved doing. And all that time, yeah, it did help me figure that out. So yeah.
We've had 200 plus episodes here, Sean, and no one has ever said, and I love Latin. It's never been spoken on the show, so congratulations. I love
Well,
Latin. Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
it's a beautiful langue. Everybody should learn it.
And
It's
it's
yeah.
see, I said I'd be done with Latin, but there's like a lot of jokes, but also a lot of curiosity from me as well. Because isn't what they call a dead language? Like no one speaks it anymore, right?
Yes, it is dead.
But we teach it.
um, yes, we do.
So what does learning Latin help us besides going on to become a Latin teacher?
Great question. And I see. I don't see my job, and I never have seen my job as teaching a skill. Um, I think, and honestly, I think that education has lost its way quite a bit over the years uh, because we are too concerned with teaching kids how to do something instead of teaching people how to be studious, how to be good
Mm,
people, how to take care of yourself,
mm,
and those are things that I always was very that goes back to Mike Brady, that whole listen, you're here at Princeton, yeah, you're learning, but you're trying to become the best version of yourself. And
mm.
how are you going to help society in the future? And I'm an academic. Obviously I took high level classes in high school and things like that, but it was more to me than that. It was always how am I helping the world, and like, listen, I'm not a president. I'm never going to be. I'm never going to be at that level, but I can help my small little part of the world.
Mhm.
And hopefully every year I graduate, 5, 10, 15 kids on my track team, and, 5, 10, 15 Latin students that are great people that are going to benefit society and
Mhm.
are going to help society grow and become better. To me, that's the most important thing I do.
Mhm.
And again, it doesn't matter what you teach.
Mhm.
You could
Mhm.
teach how to clean carpets.
Mhm.
If you're showing kids how to be studious and how to know how to do that thing perfectly well, that's great. My wife is a STEM teacher. She teaches technology education in a middle school. So, we often argue about this exact topic, and she agrees with me, of course, in terms of what we're supposed to be teaching. But um, I think things like Latin, things like English are
Mhm.
getting thrown to the side. Even Spanish and other languages are
Mhm.
getting thrown to the side a lot. Not necessarily on paper, but I think a lot of students, a lot of parents are like, well, it doesn't matter. And in the end, everything matters to you. And, we teach theology at CBA, of course.
Mhm.
And, I think a lot of those kids get a big benefit from, but I think a lot of them are like, it's theology class, whatever.
Mhm.
But you can learn just as much from that, even as a non-religious person.
Mhm.
Again, you're learning how to read, how to interpret, how to better present arguments, and that's where Latin comes in. It's like math problems with words. It's reading the best literature that's ever been written. My AP class, Advanced Placement, we read the Aeneid. We read Julius Caesar as well, which I'd rather throw in the garbage. But uh, reading Virgil's Aeneid to the kids in Latin is just, it's unbelievable, and it's awesome to me to be able to present that to them and talk about Augustus and
Mhm.
how this poem relates to him is pretty cool. So
I think we would agree with each other a lot on education. Especially I certainly didn't think about education much as I was going through it. As a 13, 14
right,
year old kid, and maybe even certainly not through college. But now having two of my own, so having a seventh grader going into seventh grade and going into fourth grade. And especially where, I'll call it technology is today in 2023, like I'm not a big fan of the memorization
right,
of education, because I'm like, well, that's what we have Google for, and definitely that's what we now will have AI for, with GPTs and things like that.
right,
But I think and you didn't say this, but and maybe you won't go this way, but we'll talk about it here. How to learn, like how to be curious. That to me
right,
is where, when you talk about Latin and the Iliad and things like that, I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I'd be curious of like how they wrote things, why they wrote them that way, how it's different than what we write today and things like that, and why they wrote it this way, because they didn't have computers and whatnot. Like, being curious to me is one of the biggest superpowers out there. And so that's I think that's why I don't like some of the rote memorization that we do
right,
in education, because it's like, well, that's just, there's no curiosity there. It's just shut up and learn this order, or learn this these formulas or whatnot. And I'm like, man, if you could just be curious, and that means that somebody's not going to be curious about math, but they're going to be real curious about English and language arts, and someone's
absolutely,
going to like that, and they're going to love talking about your wife being a STEM teacher is going to love going into physics, and
right,
why do volcanoes work, and that person becomes the greatest volcano person in the world.
right. Yep.
That's where I just look at some of the things that, like, I don't get caught up in grades for my kid. Like, they come home and they're like, oh, I only got a B. I'm like, hey, did you try real hard? Like, yeah, all right, cool. I mean,
Yeah.
what I mean, you're not going to Princeton like Sean, kid. So
You never know. You never
you
know.
never know. It's true. It's
What's
true.
funny is I had a student years ago. I taught them in seventh and eighth grade, I believe. I think that was it. I taught middle school for a while, and they became a geologist because we studied Vesuvius and
Mm-hmm.
Pompeii,
Mm-hmm.
and love the idea of volcanoes and rocks and things like that. So
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
them curious about something at least.
That's it. Exactly. And that's a great point. You don't know where the curiosity is going to come
Right.
from. That's exactly right. They may be in math class and hate math, but like, man, but I really do like my teacher. So maybe I should go into teach, and go on to teach something else. But you never know where curiosity. That's why I like the buffet analogy, especially when kids are young. And even, it's my own analogy. Don't worry. You're racking your brain like, oh, where did I study that? No, this is the Mike Cunningham original here. And even when kids get out of high school and in college and before college, of sampling a lot of things. Like, you go to the buffet,
Right.
I can have a piece of pizza plus a steak plus a twice baked potato or whatever, right? Um, try it all. Try lots of little different things. Try a
I
bunch of
agree.
different classes and see what really sticks for you. We just had a recent interview. I can't remember which one it was here, and we were talking about, like, isn't it kind of ridiculous? We make 18-year-olds pick their major. We say, hey, you're
Right.
18 years old. You're still you were just a senior the year before, by the way. But pick a major that's going to be your career for the rest of your
Right.
life. Like, that to me is just, so again, especially now that I have a, call it a middle schooler. It's like, that terrifies me. Like, that kid's going to pick what he wants to do. I certainly am not doing what I thought
Right.
at 18 years old.
I mean, we have schools in our county and in our state here in New Jersey, and New Jersey is one of the best school systems in the country. We have schools where kids are picking to be engineers at 14,
Mm.
and like and biologists and doctors, and it is very young. It's very young to do that.
And that's for some people, for sure.
It is.
For some, I'm not saying even a majority. For some, just like there is for some people should probably just be playing basketball or just running track at the age of 14. Not the majority. I think the majority should also play both sports and
Of
try
course.
something else. But certainly there's some that, yeah, they were, we're all put on another Cunningham theory here for you, Sean. The Troy grad educating the Princeton grad here. This is great. I never thought I would be able to do this. That You see, now I lost my train of thought because I was bragging about schooling the Princeton guy. What were we talking about? We were talking about, I mean, I really had a good thought here too, Sean. This is a good one too. The
This is another
buffet,
one of your theories.
it was a good theory. The buffet theory is really good.
I like that.
Yeah, it was really good, right? Yeah. It's probably not original. I probably stole it from someone. Okay, my mind blank. I'm
That's all
46
right.
years old. It happens more and more frequently. But let's keep going with yours story here, Sean. So you go to Rutgers to go, because now you want to go into teaching. So you have to do,
Right.
you thought was a teaching certificate
Yep.
course, whatnot. But did that lead to, are you actually going into teaching after
Oh
that?
yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes. So I taught it at a place called the Hun School for a year, Point Pleasant Borough for a year, and then I moved to Homedale High School. And Homedale High School is it's where New Jersey has their state cross country championship at Homedale
I've heard
Park. Yep.
Homedale. Yeah. Mhm.
It's where Bell Labs was. They invented the computer there. So when I started there, there was a lot of Lucent Technologies had taken over Bell Labs,
Mhm.
and so there was a lot of very, very intelligent families there, engineers, and some of the teachers that were working there were retired, PhDs from this place. So it was a very, very cool place to work at. So some of the kids I've taught over the years have been brilliant, and it was awesome. Uh, but about 2 years ago, and I coached there for a very long time, so 8 or 9 years ago, I guess,
Mhm.
when Chris Bennett, I don't know if you know Chris Bennett, he's a Nike guy now. He's like their global something coach.
Yes, I've
When
seen it on
he,
Twitter. Yes.
exactly, yes, when he was the assistant behind Tom Heath for a little bit. When he moved on, I took over as the assistant. I still was teaching at Homedale, and then after a year and a half, Tom Heath stepped down and retired, and so I took over his role as the head coach. And 2 years ago, I started teaching at CBA as well. I really like CBA's idea of what education is, and it's kind of what we just talked about, is creating good young men,
Mhm.
not necessarily concerned with preparing kids perfectly for a job. It's more about, hey,
Mhm.
how are you going to help society moving forward? How are you going to do that? And I dig that. So yeah.
And so, leading up to CBA, you were at a couple different spots along the way. You were coaching along the way as well.
Absolutely.
How did you continue to develop yourself as a coach? And what's interesting to me, we recently had a high school coach who doesn't teach at the high school. And I
Right.
talked about, and actually, when I coached high school, so I coached at a similar-esque school to CBA, De La Salle High School. You've heard of De La Salle schools, maybe, kind of like Christian Brothers. There's a lot of CBAs all around.
We are Christian Brothers de La Salle. So
Oh, okay. I thought,
you were,
I thought there was some kind of Christian Brothers connection.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I worked at De La Salle in Chicago,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
And so, but I didn't teach there. Yeah, I was a young college dropout actually. And I thought there were some benefits and disadvantages to not being a teacher there, but I thought there'd be more advantages to being a teacher there because you get to interact, during planning period, during Latin class,
100%.
etc. Yeah. How did you, how did you're developing yourself as a coach at this time and a teacher. How was that going for you?
It's always tough, especially when I had years where very few of the kids in my classes were on my team,
Hmm.
but it was a challenge early on when you're coaching and teaching and trying to balance that time. Um, but again, if you look at it as, hey, I start at 8 in the morning. I'm trying to teach children how to be better people, and I'm finishing at 5:30 at night.
Hmm.
And that's what I do. And so I look at every moment. I don't care how fast my kids run, never do. I mean, I do, not gonna lie, but that's not my main concern. My main concern is that, Nick Sullivan, who's just graduated for us, Lucas Ward just graduated, that they go to college and they're prepared to learn and they're prepared to be good people and they're prepared to be a good roommate and be a good family man and things like that. So if you look at your day in that way, it really changes and kind of flips on its head how you do things.
Mhm.
And I felt like when I was coaching at CBA, but not teaching there, I didn't have that mindset as well as I could.
Mhm.
And when I was at Homedale coaching and teaching there, I did. And the past 2 years have really kind of opened that door to me because now I'm teaching there and coaching there. So I really have that advantage and the ability to be that, you know, kid in my homeroom sits in the Alex Kemp. I see him at the end of the day for track practice, and it's awesome to be able to start my day and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Everett Cayley's one of my shot putters. I don't coach him, but one of the shot putters in the team, and I see him every morning. Like, "Hey, what are you doing today? How was the throws yesterday?" Things like that. I enjoy being able to do that in the school, and creating that rapport with the kids is really important. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I see many, many more advantages,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
even over like if you're faced with two choices, A and B, and one is a pretty good track coach, but also a teacher versus someone who's a great track coach but doesn't teach at the school. I'm not I'm not sure option B is the right one, especially as you were talking about. You made a great point there of, and you and I talked a little bit about it before in the pre-interview here of 99.9% of these kids are not going pro. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, the percentage of kids that go from high school to college for to run track is also very slim. I can't remember. I
Yes.
saw the actual stat somewhere, but it was very slim, which actually caught me a little off guard because in high school boys and girls participation together, track and field is the highest participated sport. Well, in college, when you have the college men and college women track and field together, it's also the most. So I kind of I mean, it's still a math game, but I still thought there'd be a higher percentage of high schoolers that went to
Right.
college, but it's not. So very few of your kids are actually going to go on to any kind of next level to run. But certainly at a school like CBA, and certainly for a teacher like you want the vast majority of them to go on to college. So
Yes.
to be able to see them in homeroom and do that check-in, you talked about that rapport with them. I think that's more important than Sean being a much, much better distance coach, that who doesn't teach at the
Uh,
school.
100%. At the high school level, I spoke at the Boulder running clinics in January.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things I said is science does not matter as much as you think it does. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
High school kids are constantly getting better. They're constantly adapting to the training because most of the kids I get freshman year have run either nothing or have run in a middle school program that was pretty terrible. I have a couple exceptions here and there, but so everything I'm giving them is adapting their bodies and making them better. So
Mm-hmm.
as long as you don't overdo it, they're going to improve to a certain extent. And then once they get to junior, senior year, you have to start throwing a little more in there. But that adaptation, it's more so what they believe in you and what they believe in themselves and their teammates. That's significantly more important to any workouts you do.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Timo Monstert out at American Fork uh, High School. He has had countless amazing athletes. and they do one workout every Monday. They run, I don't even know what it is. They call it the grinder. They run up this crazy mountain up to 7,000 feet or something like that. And I talked to him about it, and he's like, yeah, scientifically, I don't know if it really works, but these kids, it makes them believers in our system, in our program, and it toughens them to each other. And I think that is so much more important. And being able to be in the school and hook into them constantly. When we do a morning run, the kids have breakfast together, they have bagels and stuff after, and like seeing them in the morning and then seeing them at the end of the day, like you spend more time with them than their parents do.
Mm,
So whether they run a 10-mile long run or 11-mile long run does not matter.
mm,
But you want them saying, hey, I just ran that 10-mile run and I'm freaking ready to run through walls for that because I did that. That's all that matters to a large extent. With that said, you do have to have some science backing to it, and you have to kind of know what the workouts mean and what they do,
yeah.
but
Do you
you know,
think? I think this is fascinating, and it's. I used to say something that would the distance coaches would get upset with me when I used to teach level 1 for USATF. Taught 30 something schools. I always did the sprints and hurdles and power of it. I'm not a distance guy by
right.
any stretch of the imagination. But I'd always end up saying something like, in high school, I think I could make anybody. You can actually, you know what? You're actually here and on record, so you can push back and tell me how dumb the statement is. But I used to say, I pretty much think that I could make any high schooler a 10-minute 2-miler. Like I just think I can. Ooh, see, yeah, that's what I thought. Now, I was thinking of it on the science side of like, oh, I'll just make them run 50, 60, 70, 80 miles a week. I'll just get them aerobic monsters and they'll run 10 minutes. I couldn't make them 9:15s and 8:55s. Like there's a whole different ballgame. But now I wonder with what you just said, because what you said, as you were saying it, Sean, that made so much, like I'm like, oh yeah, like I started thinking about other, you mentioned American Fork. I started thinking about Joe Newton at
Right.
York High School and what he did, and I was like, oh, I maybe the real statement is, I bet I could make almost every boy a 10-minute 2-miler because I love on them and make this culture so big. It's probably a real combination of the two. I get it, but
Yeah, it is.
I love what you said there though, because I
Right.
think there's a lot of weight to that of what you said. So tell me, how has that experience played out for you then? If you're speaking at the Boulder Clinic, which is one of the top ones, is that the one? Does Jay Johnson?
Yes, Jay
Yeah,
Johnson does it.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I love Jay. We coached in the same conference in JUCO way back in the day.
Right.
He was like the
He's a good guy.
coolest. He was the coolest person in the world because he was in that book. And I'm not even a distance guy, and I read that, Running with the Buffaloes,
Oh,
and he was in
absolutely.
it, and I was like, oh my god, that guy, like he's in my conference. Like I thought I was like a movie star. Honestly,
Right.
I thought, and then I got to know him. Like, oh, you're just Jay. No, that's good. I love you, Jay, because I know you're listening right now. I know you, but I love you. I love you. So how has that played out for you then?
I mean, my predecessor at CBA, Tom Heath, was not a sciencey guy at all.
Mhm.
I think Coach Bennett, uh, same. And before I took over from a guy named Bill Lochran at Homedale High School. He as well. It was more about building camaraderie, building a team. My dad, same type of thing. I mean, he ran for Jumbo Elliott. I don't think Jumbo Elliott knew anything about science,
Mm,
but he could freaking put together a team.
very much so.
Uh, and so I think that I've kind of been raised around that idea of, yes, workouts matter. How much mileage you do matters. But if the kids don't believe in what you're doing, you could have the most talented kids, the kids could work really hard, but if they step on a starting line and they don't believe in what they just did, it just doesn't work. And I've had kids over the years that don't trust me, that don't trust our system, and they don't run as well as they possibly can, and they
Mm,
question it. And you know, you can tell right away when that's going to happen. And you try to stop it, and sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And this past couple of years, we're on a run right now at CBA. We lost in 2021 in the fall. We lost to Union Catholic in cross country. Home of Sydney McLaughlin.
mhm.
Thank God she didn't run cross country, because she probably would have beaten us as
She
well.
would have. She was amazing, right?
She's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. Funny story, sidebar. Indoors, her senior year, we have a state relay championship. and it's all the non-public large schools. And we beat Union Catholic by a little bit. It was close. She was so good. If she was on the boys team, they would have beaten us because she would have helped them. They needed one more person to be able to run relays and stuff. That's how good she was. Yeah. So, and we were
Remind
very
me,
good. We
this
were
is
very good.
embarrassing. Remind me of Union Catholic's coach's name.
Mike McCabe.
Thank you. Mike McCabe is a Gill podcast alum. I've had Mike on the podcast
Okay,
before.
there you
Yeah,
go.
that's why I said embarrassing. Is like I should know EP200. And Mike was great. I mean, you know Mike, obviously, great guy. I mean, he was fantastic to have on the podcast as well. And we tried not talking about Sydney that much because I didn't want that to be the
Of
whole
course.
show.
Of course.
But of course, we talked about Sydney. And you can't without talking about Union Catholic without them.
Yeah. But anyway, so we lost to them in cross country that year, and I just got out coached. Him and his assistant did a great job. They were very good. They finished fourth in the running lane meet. We were good too. They just beat us. I changed everything after that, and it was a tough year for me. My wife will tell you that I didn't sleep a lot. I was stressed a lot, but we started to turn things around in the spring, and by last fall we were rolling again. And so we're on a bit of a run right now, and it's a lot of just the kids not even believing in me, it's believing in each other. I think they are the best friends. They care about each other. They drive all over Monmouth and Ocean County picking each other up to run. It's a moment in CBA where it's just a good group of guys moving in the right direction. And I have an assistant coach who works in our athletics office. Our athletic director is an alumnus of the cross country team. He coached with me for a few years, so we have a lot of very, very good things going, and it's more so belief than anything else. So
Okay, I love that, and I believe in that. I'm with you. I'm tracking with you 100%, Sean. So go back. You said something interesting, and it's a topic we've kind of been talking about here in the last few weeks on the podcast. You said, my paraphrase here, things weren't going real well. You weren't, you could feel it. I could tell. I could feel it on your soul. You weren't sleeping, things like that. And you made the statement. So we changed everything, and now we're on a good roll. And I'd love to explore that because we've been talking about this in little snippets with past guests here about continually learning, right? Always being open, but then how do you actually do that? And what I mean by that is, you could have a very good program, go to a clinic or a coach's school and find out like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing any of these things. And then it's like, well, how do you implement? Do you, implement little things at a time? Do you wholesale change? I don't ever know that wholesale changing is necessarily the right thing, but you literally said we changed everything. Might have been some hyperbole.
it was.
But I'd like to explore that. So,
Right.
because I think there's people that are, I'm a huge believer, huge proponent in coaching education.
Right.
But there has to be some education of the education, meaning don't just throw out everything. Something is working for you, or you wouldn't even be at the coach's school or the clinic. There's something has to be working for you. So how do we make changes? What's the best practices? What did you mean when you said we changed everything?
I think I changed my approach into coaching, and I was very hard on myself. Still am, but in a different way now. So I think that I attacked coaching in a different way, and I think I gave kids a lot more easy days. Uh, I think that was a big thing that I started to change that after 2019, 2020. But I started to give more easy days, and it really started to kind of, and also for us, the pandemic, eh, we do a lot of group running and intervals together, as most teams do, but we move kids around a lot. And we didn't really have the ability to do that because we were supposed to keep them grouped for 2 weeks.
Oh,
And
right.
so that hurt our camaraderie a lot. That hurt our ability to build a program. And I think last kind of winter, I kind of looked at it and said, we need to get back to this, and we need to really dive in and start to build that more. And we had a couple kids. I had a kid named John Holovac. He was and I feel okay saying this, he was so bad as a freshman and sophomore. We like could barely run a mile and a half. But every time we had a tryout for the team, he'd somehow muscle it up and make the team. And I mean, he ran by himself all the time because he was so slow. I almost felt bad for him.
Mhm.
Pandemic happens, and he came back from the pandemic and was like a totally different person. And last year at the state meet, he anchored our 4x8, ran two flat.
Wow.
Yeah, like he came such a long way, and like the effect that that had on the guys on the team and me, what was so profound.
Mm.
Just watching him improve and watching him, and it was him buying into what we were doing more so than the work he was putting in. It was like, wow, like, and you could see it happening, and the kids on the
Mhm.
team could see it growing. And I think he gave a speech last year. We do a handshake line at the end of the year where the seniors shake all hands, and he gave a little speech, and like there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Like it was just, and it was because he cared so much about them. And I think they started to see like, oh, if I do that, if I care about these guys more than I care about myself, it's going to help me and
Right.
them. And I think I started to see that, and it kind of reinvigorated me to get back to that. So,
One of my mentors was longtime assistant coach and head coach at Indiana University, Marshall Goss. And when he was first teaching me, when I first got into college coaching, he really, I mean, literally like opened the books for me and showed me everything. And, we talked, of course, about recruiting and coaching. And he said, there's some programs out there that are recruiting machines. They're going to go out and get the best kids every year, but they can't coach, and they're still going to be pretty good. They're getting the best kids out of high school. And there's other programs out there that can coach their tail off. Not great recruiters. They're going to be pretty good teams. They're going to improve the kids that they do get. And I still, Marshall looked at me, he goes, and he was looking right at me. He goes, I'm going to beat you, Mike, because I'm a good coach and a good recruiter. And it really imparted on me of like, oh, no one is more important than the other. You ain't gotta be great at both, but boy, you better be good at both.
right.
And it makes me think of what you're describing here, Sean, of I'm gonna call it the passion of the team, the culture of the team, and the science part of it. How have you certainly seem to have the culture down. And I know you would say, well, I'm still working on it. I know that. I get that. But you seem to like that's a very important part to you. That story of that kid. I mean, that speech he gave probably won somebody else on your team a future state title. Like they'll remember that.
100%.
Like when I was a sophomore, oh my God, that guy. Like I was kind of half in. After that, okay, my last 2 years I was fully in, and that kid wins a state title or helps a relay team to a state title. How are you on the science part? And what I mean when I say how are you continually improving there? We don't talk X's and O's, so I don't want to hear about your quarter repeats and mile repeats or whatever else you're doing. But like, what are you doing coaching education wise? And I always deem it informal and informal. So formal being like coaching school, so USATF, USTF, CCCA, Altus, things like that, and then informal, which is just as valuable, your peer set. You're calling Coach McQueen at Rutger.
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you keep up with that side for yourself?
So I read a lot of articles. Constantly looking academic articles, also non-academic type things. I listen to your podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts while I drive around or mow the lawn, things like that. I talk to my father almost every single day about
Oh yeah,
training.
I forgot about that resource.
Yeah. It's always good, always good. Um, and I started this winter a coaches social that I have once a week with some coaches from the Mid Atlantic and Northeast.
Yeah.
I stole that. Not gonna lie, I stole it from Dave Frank and the Portland coaches. They were talking about doing it in at Boulder, and I was kind of like, oh, why don't we do that? And with
Yeah.
Zoom and Google Meet and things like that, it's very easy to do now.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe someone has this idea, or maybe we'll start this. Tell us more about that. What does that entail?
so we it's like 10 to 15 coaches I've invited. I add to it as we go. And if people, whatever, and we have a topic sometimes we don't. I try to not make it so we just complain about things all the time.
Sure.
Well, the NJSAA constantly
Yeah.
making it difficult for us. So, but we try not to do that. Sometimes I'm like, all right, let's 10 minutes, let's get it off our chests. And then,
Mhm.
we'll talk about workouts at the end of seasons,
Mhm.
or what are we doing for summer training, things like that. And it's been really, really good conversations. And we have coaches that are really good at middle distance, and coaches that are really good at cross country, and um, Pennsylvania coaches, Connecticut coaches jumped on it every once in a while, but mostly New Jersey, and it's been a lot of fun, and I've gotten a lot out of those conversations, and I'm looking to expand them in the coming year. So
Are you doing you're doing these through Zoom or Google Hangout
yes,
or whatever? I don't know if Google
yes,
Hangout even exists anymore.
Google
Uh,
Meet. It's called
Meet,
Google
yeah, okay,
Meet.
yeah.
Yes.
Tells you how old I am. I never used it, so I have no
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, yeah.
You're doing these weekly, bi-weekly?
Usually weekly.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the
And,
summer, we're cooling it down a little bit to take a little
and-
break, but
good,
yeah.
that's good. And you kind of created this, or are you kind of the leader? Like, are you like, hey,
Yes.
this week we're going to talk about end of season workouts, or hey, next week we're going to talk about culture. Next
Yes.
week we're going to talk about how to get your kids recruited. I don't know, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm the leader. I started it, I guess. I'm the one who creates the link that everybody goes to. But everybody comes up with ideas, and like I'll
Mhm.
get somebody will text me during the week, hey, we should try to talk about this, or like what after Penn Relays, I think we just talked about Penn Relays, like
Mhm. Sure.
because it's such a cool meet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But and New Jersey did so well in some of the events, so it was
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
cool. But yeah, it's
I
kind of
think this
loose.
is a fantastic idea. Um, back in my day, Sean, so I had tried, I failed. We didn't get this actually going, but I had kind of done this similar thing, but in person. Like I'd
Right.
seen the value of level one and level two of like, oh, you get all these coaches together, and certainly we have classes, but man, the talks after classes is the real. I shouldn't say the real value because the coach's education was great and was real awesome to me. And so I try to do like these huddles. I remember, in fact, one of my really good friends now, Ray Williams, who's coached at Ole Miss, Grand Valley. He's now at WashU down in St. Louis. Just won a national title, national program of the year. They're amazing down there. He and I met because I don't even know how I invited him, but he was one of the guys. I think someone else probably was like, "Hey, I know a guy named Ray Williams. He's a North Central grad. Ray Williams should be in this as well." And so I invited him. We never could make the actual weekend, so we never actually met. But I became really good friends with Ray Williams and was able to bounce off coaching ideas for my
Nice.
entire career because of him. Now with technology, not only technology, like with Zoom, obviously here, but now with the acceptance of it as well. COVID, there are some positives. There's a lot of negatives over COVID. Some
Right.
positives are, we have some, more acceptance of some of these technologies. I think this is an amazing idea. Like if people are listening and if they're thinking about like, man, you're right, when I go to the Texas track coaches show, we certainly have our speakers and they're amazing, but man, that hallway talk, like that
Yep.
was really awesome. Well, this is a way to like recreate that hallway talk every week or even bi-week, every month even. You don't have to do
Right.
this weekly. I think this is phenomenal, and I think there's people listening right now that are leaders and comfortable enough in the technology. And by the way, if you're not comfortable with the technology, it'll take 2 minutes. It's
Right.
super simple. This guy does it every week right here. So trust me, you can do it through
Well,
Zoom.
and the thing is, most high school teachers uh, should be used to it because we did it for a year. Like
Right. Oh,
yeah.
yes,
So
of
it should
course.
be.
I remember right.
I could see college coaches not really ever dealing with it, but for
Yeah.
high school kids, high school teachers,
Yeah.
it's we lived
100%.
on this for a
Do you,
while.
is the bulk of your group purely high school or do you have any college coaches?
It's all high school.
Okay.
I was worried about inviting college coaches because uh,
There might be rules against it too.
yeah, that's kind of I didn't want to put them in a bad place.
Yeah, yeah.
I also didn't want to have them feel like they had to put up airs, because
Mm,
they're the college
mhm.
coach recruiting
Right,
people.
right. Yeah.
I want it to be very loose and
Yeah. You're able to be more vulnerable around your own
absolutely,
peers. So yeah, no, I like that. I would
absolutely,
encourage you, Sean, and this may the beauty of it may be that it's not what I'm about to encourage you to do, honestly, because there's no recording of this, I assume,
no,
meaning we can just speak, and you know what? If I say something stupid, it's okay. Only these 11 people or whoever.
Yep.
But I'm just imagining this circle, and there's got to be some amazing nuggets that come out of it.
Yes. Yeah.
I would encourage you to record them and either put them as a podcast or even just put them up on YouTube. That may ruin the magic. That's why I say this might not be a great idea.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But what I do know is that there absolutely is nuggets that are coming out of there that other
Yep.
people can learn from.
Well, what's funny is I took the USATF level 1 class during the pandemic. I was kind of when I don't have things to do, I get very depressed. So my wife was like, "Go do something." So I took that class, and what's interesting is a woman that coaches at Ridge High School, who had a really really good team last year. She was also in the class. I didn't know her at the time, Nicole Gahuli, and I took this class and I hated it. It was on Zoom. I
Not the
just
same.
no. But it was, and a lot of the stuff I learned was kind of like I remember at one point maybe I shouldn't throw people. I won't mention names or
Don't even
anything.
say names. Yeah, don't say names. Right,
No,
right.
no, I don't even remember their
Yeah,
names, but
good.
they were talking about like relays and like the distance medley, and the guys teaching didn't know what the distance medley was, and I was like,
Hey,
all right.
Sean, somewhere right now, someone's going, yeah, I took this level 1, and this sprint dude got up there and was like, I can make anybody a 10-minute 2 miler, you know. So yeah. Forgive us all. All right. We all say our dumb things. And
Here's the thing. I honestly think when you said that 10-minute thing, I think this year my slowest freshman ran 10:16, and
wow.
I only had 4 guys above 10 minutes, I think,
Mhm,
that are returning.
mhm.
So we might be able to pull it off sophomores on up this year. So we'll see.
Yeah. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
But
I'm
anyway.
not saying that it was 100%. I'm just saying the bulk of kids, I can make them 10-minute kids, but we're going to
Right.
run the crap out. Some of them are going to drop out of the sport for sure. For
Yeah.
sure, for sure, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just talking on point. And to get anything under 10, like you got to, first of all, genetics have to play a part into it, of
A
course.
little bit.
But you got to coach sub 10. Like you run 950 even. It's like, oh, okay, you're doing a good job
Yes.
with actual the science and the
Yes.
culture part of it.
Yes.
Well, I love this. I'm going to call it a huddle, kind of the FCA model here a little bit, but I love that you started that. I love that you led that. I love that the people that you impact on that. I mean, that to me is real legacy type stuff, Sean. You know what you've done at Homedale and other schools, and what you're doing at CBA. Those are legacy of like, oh, this many state titles and all state certificates, and those are great. I mean, that's awesome. I love it for the kids and their
Right.
friends and families and things like that. But there has to be something extra for legacy. You know, it's like, well, what else how did he contribute to the greater sport, or, you know, my passion, the greater profession of coaching track and field? And that's what you're doing with those huddles. I mean, there are people that are, you know, I have to imagine, you know, having led kind of groups like this, there's some people that never say a word, but boy, they're there every week. They're gaining, even though they never talk. So you're like, are they really? Do they just have the mic turned off? They're not even. They're just checking a box. Yeah, I was there. No, they're gaining from it, man.
Yeah.
I love that. You were helping. You said this is kind of Mid Atlantic Northeast. You're helping all of those programs rise. You know, the tide, man. That's really amazing. I love that.
That's the goal. You know, we're trying to part of it is stemmed from in the local area here. A lot of coaches don't like CBA at all for various reasons.
Sure.
I mean, mainly because we're very good and have been for 5 decades. Um, and we do pull kids from their districts. It is what it
Right.
is. Um, but I wanted to kind of expand my thing, and like I need coaches that I can talk to, and there are some local coaches that are in the social that take part in it. So
So you call it a social.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
the Thursday night coaches social, yeah.
Thursday night
there's
social.
there's about I want to say there's like 6 or 7 that are definites every week, and then there's another 5 or so. And again, I want to expand it. We did it probably from February on. Most weeks we missed a few weeks towards the end because the track just gets busy.
Sure.
But
I get it.
I kind of started with people I knew pretty well,
Sure.
and going to expand it this year to,
What's been the sweet spot? There is something about too many people, even too few of people. Is there
right.
a sweet spot that you've noticed at this point?
Uh, Not really,
Yeah, okay.
because I think everybody's respectful of each other,
Sure.
and it's if you're out at a restaurant eating pizza, talking, it doesn't matter. It's just, you know, it's been pretty good. I think that 10 to 15 is a good number, and
Yeah, yeah,
we'll see
yeah.
where it goes. But yeah,
Yeah, I could see where, again, having some knowledge of group dynamics, you use the um, pizza palace example of like you got 10 to 15. Well, there can be side conversations there. And that's a
right,
good and bad thing, right? So good's like, okay, people are participating. Bad, it's like, hey, we're all trying to listen to this one person. You don't get side conversations on Zoom, or
no,
you just have nobody hearing anybody. But my concern with getting too big would be that the introverts can easily hide. And again, they
yes,
may still be given value, but boy, you would like to hear from them because they have
absolutely.
value to give as well. Well, I just encourage, Sean, that's amazing. I mean, I really, really love this.
Wasn't my idea.
Who'd you steal this from? I love this.
Again, I believe Dave Frank
Yeah. Okay.
at Central Catholic in
Yeah. Yeah.
Portland.
Okay. All
I
right.
just retired.
Well, that's right.
They
You stole it
started
from the West
this.
Coasters. Right. Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they
Yeah.
started this, I think, years ago.
Yeah.
And I think it started as they would go somewhere, and I think it
Hmm.
spun into a Zoom type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I would, it's funny. A while back, 10-ish years ago, I was making an observation about coaches, and I was dead wrong, thankfully, about this. What I saw through social media and stuff was I saw coaches from I'm gonna call it rival schools, so conference schools and things like that. This is on the college side, but I was like, man, like they're becoming really good friends, and I'm like,
right,
how do they recruit against each other? Now I've never and I never have been, never will be. If you've done any business with me at all, I am the exact opposite of a negative recruiter, negative salesperson now at this point. So I wasn't talking about that. I was just talking about like, man, I'm talking to the same recruit as I'm gonna use my buddy Bap as an example. With my buddy Bap at the other school, well, gosh, all I'm going to say is good things about Bap. Like, oh, you're talking to Coach Bap? Oh
right,
man, that's like my brother. I was at his wedding. He was in I was his best man, and whatever. It's like, how do this is a cutthroat business. How do you do this? But luckily, I was wrong, dead wrong about that, because what is actually happening, exactly as you described there in the Thursday night coaches social, is because of communication becoming much much easier with a cell phone in our hand and social media, etc., is we're communicating at a much much better rate, so we're learning from each other, and
right.
so therefore our base knowledge of coaches on all levels, by the way, high school, college, etc., has gone up. And I think that is why when you mentioned about the times you ran, you're like, well, back in the 90s when that was pretty good and today it's crazy, it's
Yeah,
all your fault. It's coach's fault. Everybody talking about how great these kids are. It's like, well, you the coach, you the coaching them, man. You don't want to make it all these
yeah,
crazy times. But I think that these things, and this is, and what you're describing there with the social, that's still a new thing. Like I know it's not happening a lot of places everywhere. So as that starts gaining popularity, I think our just base knowledge goes up, and
right.
even more stuff happens at a higher rate and a better rate. And I'm not talking about just the performances on the track. I'm talking about how we as people work through this profession of coaching track and field as well.
Yeah, I think I hate the whole shoes are the reason for this and super
Mhm.
shoes. Like I think in the marathon road racing, those stack shoes, yes, absolutely. This, vapor flies 100% are helping. But I think the track spikes aren't really doing much. I think
Mhm.
it's more of this type of thing where
Mhm.
your podcast. I also think some of the private coaches. I have a very strong opinion about that, but I won't mention it. But guys like Tom Schwartz and the CCG guys, Jay Johnson,
Mhm.
a kid at some random high school that doesn't have a good coach, that's really motivated,
Mhm.
now can pay a couple $100 a month
Right.
and be really good,
Right.
or at least be cared for. And I think that's raising a lot of people's game, and it's making it's making everybody better, and
Mhm.
it's challenging the normal high school coaches. I shouldn't say normal, the traditional high school coaches, and things are just improving very quickly. And it's the conversations we're having. And listen, anybody who is doing things the right way and isn't doing things that are slimy and everything, like, I respect what they do. Absolutely. One of my good friends, Chris Tofelsky, coaches at Westfield, about 45 minutes north of where CBA is. He's doing a great job up there, and it's awesome to see. Nicole, who I mentioned from Ridge High School, same thing. Like, I mean, I think they ran 734 last year for 4x8. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and it's awesome to see. Because it makes me better as a coach. It makes my team better because it challenges me a little bit.
Mhm.
When Union Catholic beat us, it challenged me and
Mhm.
challenged our team. Our guys last year were calling the whole season. I didn't know this. The last day they were like, "Well, this is our revenge tour," and I'm like, "The revenge tour? Like, what are you talking about?" But it was kind of a fun little thing they said. So I think if you look around Boulder running clinics. People were traveling there it was mostly from local states to Colorado, but there were guys from South Carolina there, guys from Florida, and a guy from New Jersey, one of me. But that's how we're getting better. That's how we're improving. And, 20 years ago, I used to go to the Atlantic City Clinic,
Yeah.
you know, and I was young, and when you're young, you only get little bits and pieces of knowledge that you can use. Now, when I go to those clinics, it's like you get everything because whatever. But
Yeah.
Atlantic City Clinic, they would videotape it, and then you'd have to buy the CD or
Yeah.
the DVD. Now Jay throws up clips on the internet. You can buy the digital version of it like in seconds, and it's just something that has changed so much over the recent years, especially since the pandemic,
Yeah.
because we were forced to do this. And coaches, when they're bored, get depressed, so we have to do things.
Right.
Like, we're tracking cross country coaches. We are 365 days a year. A
Yeah.
football coach at Homedale High School asked me one time. He's like, "Oh, what are you going to do in the off season?" I was like,
What off season?
"I'm going to coach." And he's like, "Oh, in the spring?" I'm like, "No, the winter and the spring." He's like, "Oh, what about the summer?" I'm like, "Yeah, I coach then too." And he was like, "Whoa." He's like, he just couldn't,
Hmm.
and I think that's cross country coaches, that's
Yeah.
track coaches, that's what we do.
And,
So
and by the way, to add on what you said there about coaches, as long as they're not doing things slimy, and I agree 100%. Take that off because that's table stakes. Like, as long as
yep,
you're not doing the wrong things for
yeah,
kids. I have a lot of empathy for coaches at all levels. I'm not just talking about high school coaches here. I'm talking about college as well. When they don't, when you said as long as they're doing the right things, and I think what you meant by that was they're training at a safe level and they're learning their crafts. So they're becoming better sprint coaches, distance coaches, etc.
right.
For the high school coach, I have a lot of empathy for the high school coach teacher. They're teaching all day. They have families. They're great. And I think, I wish it wasn't like this, but I think, again, since I had kids and my wife started long-term subbing as well. So I get to see kind of the inner works of what a teacher actually does, not just what I think they do.
Right.
So I have a lot of empathy of like, man, they're busy. A high school teacher is busy. Oh, now add a sport to it. And let's not forget that they're people, so they probably have a family or at least passions and charities and faith, etc. to do it. Like, so when I see I'll get onto them on the Twitter. It's basically where I live. When they start, well, these coaches, they would just take time to learn their craft. It's like, man,
Yep.
I honestly think, again, table stakes, that they're not doing anything slimy, and slimy meaning, anything bad and, hateful and revengeful
Of
and stuff like
course,
that against
yes.
kids. I think they're doing the best they can. And I think that's all we can ask for them,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, I love Sean hearing what the things that you do, and I wish that for everybody, but that's not, and that's not for everybody. It's not.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's I leave my house at 6:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. A couple days a week we have morning practice at 7:15, and then I get home at 6 o'clock at night, 6:30 at night.
Mhm.
It's a lot. And then on Saturday, in the fall, I'm already, we have a mutual calendar, my wife and I, and I'll put the meets
Mhm.
on and everything. Manhattan invite. I'm gonna be in New York City from 5:30 in the morning
Mhm.
till 6 o'clock at night.
Right.
on a Saturday. You know, it's a lifestyle you have to choose.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Absolutely. Well, earlier you mentioned that you wanted to be a college track coach.
Right.
Uh, does that desire still live? And if not, why not?
I really like what I do.
Hmm.
Um, I think right now, college coaches, a lot of the ones that my athletes are dealing with, I feel are too obsessed with numbers.
Mm,
You know, I have kids that get in contact with coaches, and you know, I have some extremely good athletes, and they tell them, "Oh, yeah, if you run this time, we'll recruit you." And you know, I just I don't like that.
hmm.
Not all the coaches are like that, but it seems like it's heading that way because
Mm,
I think a lot of the coaches they deal with are the assistants, and the assistants are trying to climb the ladder, and they're just like, I need numbers. And I think the NCAA system is very sick right now, and with the transfers and all this. And you know, I had a kid last year run 421, and they're like, oh, if you break 420, we'll recruit you. And it's like, really, man?
I was like, what's the
Like,
difference there? Come on. Yeah.
yeah, like, did you ask him when he ran it? You know, like, we've had kids that were given spots on teams, not scholarships, but given spots, and they'll take it away because he's not running fast enough anymore. And it's just, I
Mm,
just, I that's not what I'm into. I'm into teaching kids, getting them better, making sure that they're good people. And again, not all college coaches are like that.
right.
Some, when they're recruiting, reach out to me and say, "Hey, how's this guy as a kid? How, you know, how's he with his family and things like." And I think, ironically, those are the ones that win all the time.
Mm,
You know, I remember Mike Smith at Northern Arizona. He had just started there, but he was recruiting Blaze Farrow. You know, he emailed me and was like, "Hey, what kind of kid is this?" You know, and I appreciate that. I think I think it's no secret that's why he's doing well at NAU.
pretty
You
good.
know, I was recruited by Gagliano at Georgetown, and you know, one of the things that really stuck with me, I was he asked me one day, he said, "Well, where are you looking?" And I said, "Oh, I'm looking at Princeton. You know, that's my number one choice." He said, "Great school. Mike Brady's a great guy." And I appreciated that. And what's funny is Mike Brady said the same thing about Gags. So um, just that's where I'm at. And I'm not into the bottom line. I'm not into freaking out over numbers. And I've seen the way it makes my kids on my team just obsess over numbers. And it's, you know, part of it's
Mm,
miles split and athletic.net, and that's, you know,
mhm.
making lists and things, but it's a lot of, if you run this, we'll recruit you. And I don't know. I don't like that.
I
So
didn't think about that impact on the high school coach with that kid. So now does that kid, and again, we're talking big swaths here, so not every kid and every situation is unique, of course.
right.
But if that kid then comes back to you and says, hey, coach, I've got to run the mile this week
Yep.
because I got to go 420, or he won't even recruit, or he or she won't even
Yep.
recruit me. And now it's like, yeah, but we got a 4x8 set up, or no, that we
Yep.
got in our training, the 2 mile was for this weekend. I never thought about that aspect down to okay the day-to-day aspect of the high school
Yep.
coach after a college coach or coach is uses these numbers.
And not to mention, you know, my team, and that, you know, this is, I'm going to complain about something that maybe I shouldn't complain about, but you know, this year, my fourth, fifth kid was, you know, 416, 417. They don't get to run in meets all the time
All right.
because we're limited. So that's another aspect that those time constraints really affect us. But yeah, I
Do
wish it were
you,
different. I get it, but
yeah, yeah, I have empathy on both sides. I mean, again, um, it's funny when we're the NCAA equipment sponsor, so we get to do the gifts for coaches
okay.
and athletes, and so I get to it's actually one of the second coolest job part of my job, the first being here at the podcast. But I get to coach comes up and I'm like, man, congratulations! Here are your 20 athlete gifts and your 5 or
Nice.
6 whatever coaches. It's really kind of cool, right? And we'll have a coach like, oh man, where are we going to put all this stuff? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, hey man, it's your fault. You don't want to qualify all these kids, you know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
when I think about what's going on the I can't even say the collegiate, well, I'll say the collegiate level because it's also based off of the high school level. When you look at, and not just Division One, I know that's the one that gets all the pub and the press and all
Right.
that kind of
Right.
stuff, and certainly they're fast, no questions asked. You know, the 4 minute mile it's still something special. There's another
Of
podcast out
course
there
it
that says
is.
it's not special anymore. That's bunk. Still very special because it's a numerical number that we put special in this
Oh
podcast.
yeah.
Just like 10 flat in the 100 is still extremely, extremely special. Uh, but, you know, the Division Two is unbelievable. Division Three is unbelievable. I mean, literally, we get spoiled sometimes in track and field because we have so many winners at every meet. You know, if you're at a scored
Right.
meet, there's maybe a boys and a girls champ, and then we have 20 events. So there's a mile winner and a 100 winner and a shot put winner. But I think that in football, there's only one winner. Like there's not a
Right.
quarterback winner, there's a team winner. So I think sometimes we as track coaches forget that winning is hard.
Very hard.
Period. Winning is hard. So to win Division Three, that's hard.
Very hard.
Look at the results, right? So when you get down to the recruiting side of it, like I have a lot of empathy of the coach who says, "Oh man, you know why 420 is my number? Because golly, it takes four flat to make it to nationals. So
Right.
420, I think I can develop a 420 to a four flat through 4 years. 430, and we're just somewhere there's got to be a divider. So 420,
Right.
421. I'm not sure I'd be that harsh on the guy who's running 421 if 420 was my number, but whatever. So I can also understand that aspect of it too. But I also, you know, kind of to that point, what I said about my mentor Marshall Goss and what he said. I heard someone the other day. It was on Twitter, of course, and they said, and I think I believe the context was, I could be wrong here. They were talking to track coaches, college track coaches, and they said you need to spend less time recruiting and more time. I can't remember what he said. Not developing, but I think I can't remember what the word they were used, but it was like learning your kids, like
Right.
engendering trust. Like if you think the portal and transferring sucks because all your kids are transferring, well, maybe you need to spend a little less time recruiting and a little more time with the kids that are right there in front of
I
your.
agree.
Kind of my paraphrase to it. So I understand, like I get that, and
Yep.
I also get like, yeah, that's great, and I love these kids. They're here, they're on my school. The next crop has to come. I mean, there's a
Yep.
lot of pressures of just the. I mean, we're a time-based sport, right? It's time and distance-based sport, so
Yeah.
we're always looking at it, it's like, man. I need more 420s. That's the bottom line. I will be successful if I get more 420s, and I don't have time for 430s.
But think about this. As a high school coach, if you send a kid off to college, if the kid does really well, college coach is the hero. If he does poorly, the high school coach did too much and burned him out.
Mm, I think you're coming at that from the angle of you're a high school coach.
It's that's what we get, man. That's unfortunately that's the general perspective that we get. You know, and there's a lot of reasons why kids succeed and fail in college. And
100%.
yes, there are
Absolutely.
times when kids come from schools that have no coaching and they go to a great school and they do very well.
Mhm.
You know, there's kids that come from CBA that have very good coaching and they do, like kid Blaze Farrow, Tim McInerney down at Georgetown. Those kids do very well
Mhm.
beyond that. But a lot of it is okay. And we don't just coach a runner, you know, we
Mhm.
coach a full person, a full team. And when kids don't get that in college, and that's
Mhm.
not necessarily the college thing to do. I think some do that,
Mhm.
but it's not necessarily what they're supposed, you know, that's not their job necessarily. And that's why they don't succeed. Or there was a kid on my team, Andy McClintock. He he was the West Virginia state champion in the mile. I think he ran like 413 in high school in 1990, you know, four when that was your top 10 in New Jersey
Yes,
in the
right, right.
country at the time, right? Um, he decided, you know what, I want to be the best I can be in school and I want to study. And he ended up, I think he got into UVA law school. And but after he finished his thesis, he ran like 402 or 403 or something like that. And it was just a matter of like he wanted to do school. And so I think there's a lot of different reasons, but I think in the public perspective, um, I think a lot of people look at, oh, you coach college, you're better at coaching
Sure.
kids.
That I'll 100% agree with you. That in
You
the
know,
because Sean, what I'm gonna tell you is I love you. I love you. I think what you are expressing here is the exact same thing that, and I've had it where a college coach has said exactly what you said. If a kid comes to my program and improves, great. I get some accolades for that. If they don't, it's my fault. Because there's literally a Twitter poll going on right now.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, about how much improvement in college is a success. Is it 5%, 6%? And one of the options is any improvement. Is that a success?
Right.
And so that starts, conversation of, well, why don't kids get better PR, et cetera, in college, et cetera? And the greatest answer that I've ever seen, and I wish I remembered who said it, because this person to me is spot on. And they had a one word response of why doesn't every kid improve in college? And I think it was a he. His response was life.
Yeah.
They go to college. You went to college.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to college.
Yeah.
There was a lot of choices in front of me in college that I did not have in high school.
Right.
There was a lot less governorship over me and my parents, etc., in college. And some of us make great choices, and some of us make not so great choices. Some
Right.
of us survive those choices, and others, to their detriment, have that.
And some of the great choices are, you know what, I want to go to med school.
Agreed. No, no.
So, some of
Yeah,
the great choices are, or bad
yeah,
choices are great choices.
yeah.
It's
Yeah. No, I
life.
agree with that 100%.
I like that.
So that's why I say, Sean, I think you're coming at that from your perspective as a high school
Maybe.
coach. I think it's I think a college coach would say, oh, you're great. We never blame the high school coach. It's always our fault only. And it's really in the middle. And what I mean by in the
Maybe.
middle of, I honestly think Sean is doing the greatest job that he can do. And I think the college coach is doing the greatest job he can do. That kid, we're talking about 18-year
Oh,
old
absolutely.
kids, 19-year-old kids, they go and they fall in love and want to go
Yeah.
do a relationship, or they go to decide, I'm going to do the best I can in school. I never buckled down in high school. I'm actually going to try in college, and they go to medical school, law school, etc. That's a success, by the way, just because they don't PR on
Absolutely.
the track. Because it's funny that the college coach will say that the high school coach is always on them, like, why, how come these kids don't PR? How come you've got them for a whole year? My kid that ran 416 also played basketball. I had that at De La Salle in Chicago, by the way. 416 miler,
Wow.
he ran 913, 915, 2 miler, who was a stud basketball player.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Did not go on to do anything in college. He went to Kentucky, by the way. And I'll say this because I think it was not Kentucky. Don Weber was the coach at that point.
Okay.
Matt Masivic, who beat, oh gosh, now I forgot his name. Real good kid that went to York, as Marius Bakken, who's now,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So you would maybe know
Right.
Marius, right? He's a
I
big
do.
science running coach, right?
Yep.
Marius did his senior year at York and was a stud, 152 half miler, etc. Matt Masivic, our kid, beat him in cross country. Now Matt Masivic then went on to basketball. He was 6'4", probably could bench
Wow.
300. I mean, he looked like a power forward in basketball, not a 913 2 miler. I think he got everything he was getting out of his body in high school. I,
Right.
I don't think there was a sub 9 in that man, unless he decided to cut out all eating and lifting and maybe go to 140 and maybe I don't know. But I think he's an 18-year-old kid that's like, oh man, he tapped out. That's as far as he was ever getting, and he certainly wasn't going to go on to be a 10K
Right.
kind of person weighing 180 or whatever he did. So I think it's actually in the middle. It's like, man, you're dealing with, first of all, kids. Second of all, you're dealing with a unrestricted life now in college, typically,
Yeah.
where they have a lot more choices, and again, bad choices, good choices, etc. So
Right.
I think it's more in the middle. I don't think you take the blame in reality, Sean, and I
All
don't.
right.
College coach, you like that? Okay, good.
I do. I do.
I don't
I
think
do.
college coach that's listening, you don't take the blame either. What we do is, and this is why I truly come from this perspective first and foremost, is I think you're doing the best job that you can do. What you do at CBA is 1,000 times different than what American Fork, I think you mentioned,
Oh, I agree.
Portland West, DeSoto High School. They're all super unique incidences here.
And what's funny is something I do when I send my kids off to college to run. Um, I don't talk to them about their training. I don't talk to them about their coach,
Mm,
at least for like a year. I've never really told my kids that. And some of them
yeah,
I don't really reach out to until,
yeah,
just to let them get into their coach and listen.
yeah,
I'm not your coach anymore.
yeah.
If you need advice about school, relationships, or I've had kids approach me say like, "Hey, my coach is doing this, this, and this. How do I deal with that? I'll tell them, hey, go talk to him. So I really try to. My hands are clean. Once they graduate, if they need help with anything transferring or whatever, yeah, of course. But that's not, their coach is their coach. They've chosen that school. They liked it there for a reason, and I try to stay out of it as much as I can. I know other coaches, high school coaches that do meddle, and I 100% disagree with that because again, it's all about what the kids believe, and if they believe in their
Oh,
coach and believe in their school and their teammates, they're going to do well.
and if you believe in that, Sean, then you have to model that when they go
Absolutely,
into the program. Yeah.
100%. Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So let's take advantage of this experience you have. You've got some great kids there, and by great meaning not necessarily all Division I recruits. You've probably sent kids to D2, D3, NAI, etc. So let's keep talking about this recruiting aspect. Something that you said, and I'm curious to get more of your opinion on about coaches that call you. That's another big topic that gets discussed, and it's funny because I'm on the side. When I coached college, I never called the high school coach. If I called the high school coach, it was like to get the kid's number, that kind of
Right.
thing. And I'm not saying I'm actually kind of I'm not sure where I am anymore on what I think. You seem to have a much more favorable like, hey, I think the coach. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you believe the college coach should always at least reach out and talk to the high school coach about the athletes they're recruiting?
I think it's I'm not a college coach. I never have been. So I can't really speak to much of this, but contact is so easy to make now with email and things like that. Um, I've only ever had one call me. Usually I get emails.
Sure. Put email and call together there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm with
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Communicate is the real word. Yeah.
I mean, there are times when I email coaches about kids and I never hear back,
Mm.
which is a little frustrating,
No, I'm 100% with you on this one.
What's fascinating to me is
Yeah, I don't like that.
I, I have a sophomore who ran 904 and 450. He's really, really good. And like, I know there's some coaches that ignored me the past year or two about other kids that are going to reach out. I don't know, but I have a feeling. But anyway, I think that reaching out to high school coaches and not necessarily about training. Some do that. Some will send me an email like, hey, like, do you have logs? Like, what kind of things do you do? What has helped him? Which I appreciate, but I don't think that's as important. I don't know if you listen to the podcast of, uh, with Eliud Kipchoge's coach recently. Anyway, he took on Faith Kipyegon, and he refused to look at any of her past training. He's like, I want to learn from you as an athlete. Anyway, so
A
that
little
kind of
different
put,
level.
of course,
Okay. All right. No,
little bit.
I'm that was a real question, not a smart aleck question. I was like little different level, but I'm with you. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I found that fascinating. But some coaches do reach out and say, like, hey, is there anything you can give to me? What helps him? Whatever. I've heard from some coaches a year or two in, like, hey, Johnny's not running
Mm.
well. What can I do? I appreciate those things because again, they're trying to help the kid out.
Mm.
Um, I don't think they have to, but I think it's a good touch. I've generally heard when it's a really good kid. Recently this past spring, I had a kid who was going to visit Villanova. And I reached out, I guess in the winter, I reached out to Marcus and I said, hey, Marcus, this kid is awesome. He's a great leader, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And Marcus appreciated that. He said, thank you so much. He's a quiet kid. I didn't really get that from talking to him
Right.
for an hour. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he's going to Villanova and, it worked out for him. But I think there needs to be more of a relationship between the
Yeah.
NCAA and high school coaches. And I understand it's hard
Mhm.
because sometimes they're recruiting 50 kids, 100 kids.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. That's right.
yeah, and that's hard. That's really, really hard. But
On top of coaching their own 30, 40 kids or
yep.
whatnot. Yeah. I think, it's funny when you mentioned that 420, 421 example. Um, and I think this is for all events. Maybe there's some exceptions with something like I don't know, I don't know. Maybe there's some exceptions here, but I would think on the distance side, at least, I would want to know, well, what kind of training is this 420?
Right.
Is this 420 a kid who's running basketball, until March, and then he's coming to me and he ran
Right.
420? Maybe 421's okay on my little 420 scale or whatever. Or again, just using that example, the 421, 420 thing. Hey, yeah, that kid, he's a mileage guy. Like he runs 100 miles a week, whatever. And it's like, ooh, I don't know. If I'm a big
Right.
mileage guy, I'm like, well, gosh, what am I going to get? Because when I recruited sprinters, I like to know, because I'm a very speed based, fly 30, those kind of things. When one of the first questions I would ask a sprinter is like, hey, give me what a speed day is. Like when coach says it's time to run fast, what's a speed day? And when that kid said, oh yeah, we run 10 by 200, I was like, ooh, okay, I like this kid. Like you're
Yeah.
gonna come to me and we're gonna get developed, right?
Right.
But if they started talking about, oh yeah, we do, acceleration first, then we do fly 30s, it's like, well, man, how much better? I mean, then I'd
Right.
ask, like, well, what do you do in the weight room? And it's like, no weight room. Cool. Oh yeah, we do a lot in the weight room. It's like, oh crap, I'm not even gonna, he's already getting stronger. Like,
Right.
what
Right.
am I
Right.
really gonna do here? So I appreciate that. And then I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, you call me the high school coach because I can tell you if the kid's a jerk or is late all the time and things like that. And that I don't know if I buy, because it's hard to tell a college
Oh
coach.
yeah.
You may try to say it in different ways that maybe coach don't pick up on. I just think that's hard. I'm not saying they're going to lie. I just think
I agree.
that's hard.
There's very few college coaches that I would reveal anything like that to. Um, I have good relationships with a handful. Um,
Yeah.
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 But those are the ones that I would trust my kids with more than
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Steve Dolan at UPenn.
Yeah.
He coached my wife at the College of New Jersey back in the day.
Oh,
So but like he's the guy. I was with that guy Chris Bennett one time at Nationals down in North Carolina years and years ago. Um, and he sat and had dinner with us for 2 or 3 hours. And there were two other college coaches. When they found out we were high school coaches, were like, oh, and walked away. And it was like, and Chris Bennett was coaching the best team in the country at that time. And it was like, and Dolan hung out with us for 2 hours. And it was, that's where I kind of got to know him. And I have other Vigilante at Princeton, and part of that is regional, and they're close to me. I lifeguarded with Bob Farrell over at Rutgers.
really?
Yeah, yes.
Hey, he's doing a great job.
He is. He really
Rutgers is
is.
a different team today
It
than it was
is.
5 years ago. I
It
told them at Big
is.
Tens last year, I was like, hey, man, people are noticing. Like, the Big Ten ain't like, oh, great, whatever, Rutgers, who cares? Big Ten now is like, oh, crap, Rutgers is going to have
Getting
someone here and
guys.
here and here. Him
Yes.
and his crew are doing a
Yeah.
really good job there. I'm
Well, I
proud.
went to elementary school with his throws coach, so we all lifeguarded together later in life. So
For us that are not from the Northeast, do you guys just all know each other? I mean, like, I know it's like
yes,
20 states up there, but it's like real small area and you're all
yes.
living on top of each other.
There's a couple states like you drive through Delaware and it's like you pay $25 to get through it and it takes you 10 minutes. Rhode Island is very similar without the
Yeah.
payment.
Yeah.
But the
So
Northeast is pretty close. It's
another thing that you said that I have strong feelings, I guess might be the right word. You mentioned emailing some college coaches and just zero response. Oh, that breaks my heart,
yeah.
because like on Twitter, if you read my bio, and if you read any of my tweets, I'm not a coach anymore. And yet I get
Right.
kids at least once a week, and at times it's once a day. Hey, coach, love your school. Here's my stats. Would love to come to school there. And I'm like, bro, like do 1 second of research, and I'm not the coach. I'm the coach
Right.
advocate. But I will respond every time, and I'll say, hey,
Yeah.
first of all, love your hustle. Like I love that. I mean, I need you to take one more layer of that hustle, but I love that you're reaching out. Go find school. I was like, I'm not at a school. Go find a school. None of them will ever go unanswered. Like I just feel this sense of like responsibility. And so as a college coach, and by the way, vice versa, if a college coach is emailing a high school coach and they don't
Absolutely.
respond, that's the same. It's like
Absolutely.
you ain't got to write a book each time, but respond. Even if it's like, hey coach, I'm sorry, I appreciate you emailing me, I just don't respond to these emails. I
Right.
use a recruiting service, or I use my own, whatever. But to not respond, oh, because I
Yep.
know the coaches are so awesome people. It's like, why
Yeah.
don't you respond?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it goes to junk mail sometimes. Maybe they're just not good with email. Maybe their assistant takes care of all that stuff,
It's
and you're emailing the wrong
2023.
person.
We're
I
not
know.
going to give
I'm being nice,
almost any one of those as an excuse. Junk mail, you should be checking your junk mail every day and then emptying it for real junk. You don't know email. It's 2023. That means you ain't doing very good anyway. There's no one
Maybe,
out there not doing it. And if your
maybe.
assistant's doing it, that's fine too, because that assistant can hit the reply button just like anybody else.
True, true. Yeah, it's always frustrating me when I email a coach about a kid that might be a walk on, never hear back, and then a year later I hear from them about another kid, and it's like that
That's
they
so
want to recruit.
transparent. That's
Yeah,
so
it's
transparent. That
yes.
is transactional. It's like, hey, Sean,
Yep.
you're important to me when you have a 405, but when you have a 430, you're not important to
Yes.
me. That's what college coach, anybody, if you're not responding to emails, that is what you are saying without saying a
Yes.
single word, without hitting reply. You are saying
Yep.
you're only important to me here if you have this, if you're not. And guess what? People sniff that out. And when they do have that 405, you're no longer important to them
Right.
when it comes to that, to help at least.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, Sean, even if there's a coach that you're like, man, this coach is kind of a whatever you might feel towards them, they never responded. But a kid says, hey, I really like that school. Would you make a call for me? You're like, all right, yep, hey,
Oh no,
I'm
absolutely.
gonna give you my
100%.
experience. Yeah, yeah, that's what I would think.
Listen, these college teams, they're not my teams. I'm not trying to tell people how to do their jobs. It's not my
Right.
whatever. It's just that's the view I have from the high school world.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I am a high school coach. I teach Latin, I teach Latin and I coach on the side.
Yeah,
I may spend a lot of time coaching, but I spend more time teaching.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's that's my job. That's what I
Okay.
do. So I'm not trying to do somebody else's job and
That's right.
criticize somebody, whatever. Um, but yeah,
All right,
that's
last two topics as we start to wrap
okay.
up tonight. One's recruiting still.
Okay.
Um, there's been another topic on Twitter that happens a lot, and that's about the high school coach communicating with the athlete their freshman year in college. You started touching on this, and again, I only come from my experiences. So for me, I was a majority of my career was a college coach. I'm like, no, I don't want you to talk to that kid. Now, I don't care if you're talking just to Todd, but like,
Right.
don't you have other things to do? Like you got more kids to coach, right?
Yep.
But then there's a whole nother, there's a 180 of that where people are like, oh yeah, the once my kid, always my kid. They're my babies. I've known them since they were 12 years old. I'm going to
Yeah.
take care of them. And you kind of mentioned it like at least kind of the first year, like, hey man, that's
Right.
your program, that's your coach. You believe so much that how much that athlete believes in the coach and the program is important. So it feels like you were saying, like, I need you to start believing and feeling into that program
Yes.
so you can be successful.
100%. I try to stay out of things. I try to stay away. When they run races well, hey, great job. Like I'm a fan. That's basically what I am.
Yeah.
And a support person. If they reach out to me about things, um, I will not talk to them about what the coach is doing.
Right.
You know, if there's a problem, of course, and like
Right.
something shady's going on, of course that's a whole different thing. But if it's normal coaching and they need some advice, like, hey, go talk to your coach. I'm
Mhm.
not doing it for you. I'm not going to say negative or positive. That's just you know go
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
That's part of being a college kid. That's part of doing that. But I strongly believe that kids, once they get to college, they have to be coached by their college coach. So
Yeah. I think, I applaud you for that, Sean. Um, the same goes on the college side when we switch jobs.
right.
If you truly cared about those kids that you were now formally coaching, you would say, hey, this new coach, hey, they hired them for a reason. Like, you're gonna be fine. Oh, they do things differently than I do. Hey, that's great. Maybe that's a better way for you. Like,
Yep.
communicate with that person. I remember when I left Ball State to go to Mississippi State, and it's so funny because now we're very, very good friends. The coach that replaced me was Brian Fetzer, who
Okay.
went
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
coach at Harvard and Cal and
Yep.
UVA, and now is an amazing athletic director in the Cincinnati area. And I remember my high jumpers, I had a really good squad of high jumpers. They would call me and just, oh, Coach, we're not doing this anymore. But and the other day, Coach Fetzer said, you do best to forget everything Coach Cunningham ever said. And I remember I was like, hey, he's probably right. Like, I'm not coming back there. So, and the guy's pretty good. Like, I know, where he'd come from. I'm like, he's pretty, it's not like this, I'm not some scrub. Like, this guy Fetzer is a pretty good coach. Listen to him, like, trust him. It may not look right today. It will look right tomorrow. And that's probably the best thing I could ever do for those kids who I cared tremendously for. If I would have done the opposite and said, yeah, Fetzer, yeah, he's an idiot. Yeah, boy, he transfer, get out. I would be doing those kids such a disservice.
Right.
So I think if you truly care about the kids, your attitude is more of the right attitude of like, hey, man, you've got to believe in this coach. And I can either help that or I can be a hindrance to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's really good. All right, last thing here, Sean, tonight. I appreciate again you telling so much tonight. I don't do on purpose a lot of pre-research. It allows me to kind of keep my curiosity cap on and just ask questions. But I have been in the minutes before we hop on, especially if you're on Twitter, just going and kind of just looking at your Twitter account real quick. And it seems like you might be a writer. You have kind of a blog thing going on. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I use that as kind of a journal, and I've always jotted down my ideas of what I need to fix, and I said, you know what, maybe I can share some of these ideas, and I don't know, get some conversation going about coaching and whatnot. That's again one of my goals with the Coaches Social. It's the same thing. It's let's start conversations, and I send those out, and I get 3 emails from across the country from coaches like, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And that's what I'm trying to do. Not be the expert, but start that conversation, because I'm not an expert at anything. I'm an expert in my house here in Neptune, New Jersey.
I don't know if that's true, because your wife sounds pretty high powered, so I'm not sure that might be true.
True. Listen, I'm the expert at the lawn here.
Okay, I'll give you that.
All right. But yeah, it's just to start those conversations. And I love getting a text from a coach like, "Hey, read your article, really cool, but what do you think about this?" Or I disagree. I think that's what's going to help make us all better, without a doubt. So,
Sean, man, as I hear your story and hear the things that you're proactively doing, like, first of all, I'm just so proud of you, honestly, because that's what
thanks.
my whole life is about. How do I lift up and honor track coaches? Right. And what you're doing is a big part of that. I want to encourage you. I don't know that if you're doing this or not. I'm gonna encourage you to do more. You're hosting these socials. I love that. You're doing this this newsletter blog. That is amazing. There's a lot more in you. In both aspects, both the science and the culture side of things. You're obviously, we don't talk X's and O's here, but you drop little nuggets of like, yeah, my worst seat or freshman was 1016. So obviously, the science part of this pretty good too.
Right.
I'm going to encourage you in two fronts here. One is reach out to some of these other amazing podcasts and YouTube shows. And get on as guest and talk about the topics that you're comfortable talking about. From the On Track and Field podcast out in the West Coast, they do an amazing job. Athletics LLC, they're a great group that talk a lot about track, and they could use a high school perspective. And now that I think about it, there's some NCAA coaches, so maybe they can't, but don't let that stop you from asking. And there's a bunch of other, and I don't even know them because I don't listen to the X's and O's podcast, but there's a bunch of other ones I know that are out there. I just encourage you to reach out to them and say, hey, we're always looking for guests. Let me just give you the little dark secret of podcasts that interview people. We are always looking for guests. Trust me. I just encourage you to reach out and just be like, hey, not sure if I would be a good fit for you guys, but if you ever wanted to talk about X or Y or Z, I might be good for you. Because I think there's a lot of you're already doing it. I'm just trying to figure out how do we do more of it, right? How do we expand and continue to come out? And then the other thing I would encourage you to do, and maybe you're actually doing this the right way through the newsletter blog. Maybe you're more of a writer than you are anything else. But I'd encourage you to start a podcast, man. Whether it's a YouTube show or an actual podcast, and whether it's an interview show or just a you show, or it's it could be. I encourage college coaches to do this for just their program. Like start a podcast just for your alumni, fans, and recruits.
Right.
It doesn't have to be this big, huge, bunch of listeners. It can be very niche to you and your culture and your program. But I would encourage you to you got a lot of great ideas and a lot of thoughts and a lot of ways to pull things out of people is kind of what I sense from you. So I would encourage you to explore something in that avenue, that there could be more value. I know you don't have enough on your plate, so I'm just trying to figure out how to help you do more stuff.
For the next month or two, I'm okay. I got time.
Yeah,
Summer,
there you go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was amazing. I love your I'm gonna call it your lineage from your grandfather to your dad.
Oh, yeah.
The way that you could have gone a whole different angle. I'm so happy that you went the angle you went to.
Me too.
I'm glad you never gave up. As I heard your story, I was like, oh man, I might have given up right there. Oh man, it happened again. Yeah, I might have given up there. Oh man. I mean, there's a lot of times where one of the options you had was to give up and run, run away.
Right.
And you never did, man. And I'm sure if we were to explore other avenues of your life, I bet that's a theme of yours of like, man, this has been a hardship, but you know what? I'm not giving up. I'm gonna double down here and figure this thing out. And get help along the way as well. So I think your story is going to have a lot of value to those who listen to us today, and I think you're gonna get a few more emails. I think is what ultimately is going to come about, because you've got
so.
I do.
Hope so. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Sean, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thanks,
man.
Mike.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here and listening. This was amazing. I don't have a lot in common with the distance coaches. Anybody who knows me, I don't like driving 2 miles, so I certainly ain't running 2 miles. But it's always great to hear the perspective of a high school coach that is very, very successful. There's more that we didn't even tap into in regards to the athletes he's produced and his team and his staff have produced throughout the career. But obviously at a very high level. You heard some of the little nuggets of times that his kids have produced there. So obviously he's got a lot of experience there. And that's where I think the value of this conversation really lies, in the kind of the melding of the college coach and the high school coach together. And I know club coach, you're in there as well. There's a part of that in there as well there, that if we talk more and discuss more and have more open and frank conversations, I think we all get better. And I hope that today's conversation helped us all get better today. So thank you for being here this week. Join us next week on the Gill Track and Field Connections podcast, and we're going to do it all over again. I don't know how we top this one, but we'll try to figure it out. We'll see. There's a lot of great people there. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.